Well, let's go ahead and get started. So we've done these before, several of them. We've done one in Lent, and I think we've done a couple of Advents. I personally find them helpful, just because it forces, to do the meditations and the devotions, it forces me out of my pattern. I have to figure out how I'm not going to continue my pattern and add this on. So I find these helpful, and usually the reflections are really, really wonderful. So this is kind of what we'll do here. We'll put my glasses back on so I can read this. We're gathered. We'll breathe here in just a moment. Opening prayer. We'll address the question of what do you hope for Advent. You can probably sort of stream through the guidelines for listening. We'll read the gospel lesson, which some of you haven't heard. And then there's a reflection. There's always a really long reflection on the Sunday. Hi, come on. Long reflection on Sunday. And then there's Monday's reflection, since the theme of the week. We'll talk about that. And then we'll just have some conversation, decide what, if anything, we're going to do for the rest of the week, and then we'll close. So the pattern is pretty much the same each time. So I invite you, we'll go back so we can start that, but let's just sort of everybody breathe and come into this space. All of the other things that we have been doing on this morning. Let's say this opening prayer, assuming that you can read it up there together. O God of peace, who hast taught us that in returning and rest we shall be saved, in quietness and confidence shall be our strength. By the might of thy Spirit, lift us, we pray thee, to thy presence, where we may be still and know that thou art God. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. The language.
I was surprised.
What's that?
Yeah, I was surprised by the language.
Yeah, it was in there. It wasn't my choice.
Well,
So, not everybody knows everybody, and so I think that this will be a good introduction. So, who are you? And then the question, what does Lent, or what does Advent mean for you? What do you hope to get out of this time together?
Would you like me to start?
Well, thank you. I was trying to decide if I was going to start.
I identify as Deacon Nadine. What else do we want to know?
Question.
Oh, what does this season? Advent and Lent are my two favorite seasons of the year, because I guess there's not much more other than that. But what they always I let them force me into a focus, just to focus. And so I like the focus on light. And I think that's kind of that's where I'm going this Advent, is focusing on light, because I feel like I need to practice being the light. I need to be inspired to be the light, and we need light in the world. And I call on Mary. I invite Mary. You can pass.
My name is Mary. Actually, I think I'm looking forward to this season mainly because everything else you do during this month is crazy. And this at least gives you a moment to just slow down and realize what's really going on, what's important. And I'm looking forward to new perspectives that I will get out of this time together. So, thank you.
So my name is Celeste, and the thing that attracted me straight away was peace. Peace?
Speak up.
Speak up. Oh, sorry. All right. Yes, my name is Celeste, and the thing that attracted me most to start with was the word peace. Because we are, Mike and I are in a big tumultuous time in our life where we are about to move to another country. And so it also ties in with Advent, where I feel that Advent is like a new beginning, and we are about to approach a new beginning in our lives. And so it's a wonderful thing, but at the same time we need peace in order to get there. And so peace and new beginnings for me came together, and that's very important. And so Advent is a wonderful season, and as Mary was saying, it's a pretty tumultuous in itself, because it's everyone's thinking of everything else, but what is the meaning? And we are starting off on a journey which is opening up our lives to something new, and so Advent is just that, new beginnings, new life.
Oh, that's pretty neat. And my name's Mike. Yeah, I actually never thought about that question. I mean, Advent has always meant, growing up, Mom baking cookies. My mom was German, so she'd bake all kinds of German goodies. And then the house was decorated without the tree, had the Advent wreath on the table. And then after dinner, she would play the German Christmas albums, the old ones from the 50s and 60s, and we'd have our chocolate milk, and Mom encouraged us to sing the German Christmas songs since we had to do that Christmas Eve as well. That's what Advent meant to me growing up. Right now, I can't really say, except what she said.
That's all. Val, I think peace, calmness, all those things I'm looking for.
I think for me, Mary said a lot of it, and you alluded to it too, but, and as I said before, this causes me to sort of have to shift some priorities around and say, am I going to do this? No, I'm going to do this instead. But I remember several years ago, and I mentioned this in a sermon, so I can't remember, it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, my spiritual director, because I was trying to figure out how do you juggle Advent with stewardship campaign, with all of this other kind of stuff, and how do you how does one in the role that I had sort of observe Advent? And his suggestion was just pretend that you've been given the baby Jesus to hold. So that was my focal point for that year, and I don't think we did one of these that year, but this helps give me a different focal point, and I think given all the other crazy stuff that is going on in around family life and all that, plus all the crazy stuff that happens in church life, to sort of see where the peace is, or where it can be. So that's what I actually told different spiritual director, because my other one got pulled away. That's what I told the current spiritual director on Tuesday. So, thank you. So we know how to listen, I think. You can take a look at those. The instructions say go around and read them one by one aloud each time. I don't think we need to do that. But they're pretty standard, I think, for most people who've ever been in discussions, especially in church settings. So, what I'd like to do is have us read this, this is the gospel for today, and take a paragraph and then let somebody else read the next paragraph and then somebody else read the next paragraph. We have some other things where we will just continue to sort of go. We can probably go around in a circle on this. But somebody want to start? We'll read it aloud.
There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth there will be dismay among the nations in their confusion over the roaring of the sea and surging waves. Planets and other heavenly bodies will be shaken, causing people to faint from fear and foreboding of what is coming upon the world. And then they will see the human one coming on a cloud with power and great splendor. Now these things begin to happen. When these things begin to happen, stand up straight and raise your heads, because your redemption is near.
Jesus told them a parable. Look at the fig tree and all the trees. When they sprout leaves, you can see for yourselves and know that summer is near. In the same way, when you see these things happening, you know that God's kingdom is near. I assure you that this generation won't pass away until everything has happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will certainly not pass away.
Take care that your hearts aren't dulled by drinking parties, drunkenness, and anxieties of day-to-day life. Don't let that day fall upon you unexpectedly, like a trap. It will come upon everyone who lives on the face of the whole earth. Stay alert at all times, praying that you are strong enough to escape everything that is about to happen, and to stand before the human one.
Just, this isn't in the instructions, but we're going to do sort of a African Bible study thing and say, was there a word or phrase that stood out in that, or that really resonated with you? As you heard or read?
Take care that your hearts aren't dulled by drinking parties, drunkenness, and the anxieties of
I like the turn of the seasons. I just love the change of, look at summer and what's happening to the leaves. When I come out of my condo, I've been listening, not looking, but listening to the tree outside our condo, and I suddenly heard a crunchy sound as the wind blew through the leaves, and I thought, autumn to winter. Because they no longer had that little flow in the leaves, they had the crunch, that tiny crunch, and now it's more, and now the trees are going orange and red, and they're falling off. And so for me, the change of seasons is really beautiful and special, and it shows the circle of life.
Yeah, this is, as I was preparing for sermon, I read a lot of these tropes, and they're all the way through the New Testament, all these sort of cautions about engaging in all this. But the one that I liked about this one was that it said anxieties.
Yeah.
And that was a little bit different. It talks about how we get caught up in these other kinds of, and you have to wonder whether or not, is it a vice? Is anxiety a vice like some of these other things are? Any other thoughts?
I think I'm not in the midst of foreboding of what is coming, but I'm certainly avoiding it very, very well.
We are indeed taking a flight out of here, so we will certainly be avoiding it.
Yeah, so fight or flight, you're flying. Literally, you will be.
Exactly.
Well, let's look at this reflection, and this is the reflection for today. If you find the either download or have it, it's up to you. This is the reflection you should see for Sunday of Advent. So we'll continue on if you don't mind reading that.
I've lived near rivers most of my life, the Mississippi, the Alabama, the Kentucky, and they continue to create remarkable places for me to explore on my days off. Waterfalls, wildlife preserves, and wetlands all hold a bounty of God's beauty.
They also hold within them power for destruction. Too much rain, too many people building in floodplains, and too confident a belief we can control nature with levees and locks. And these same beautiful rivers become unhelpful and even destructive forces.
Which is why on a Sunday, I was on vacation. As I gathered to worship in a small church overlooking a meandering river, I questioned the hymn writer's words as we sang, "I've got peace like a river in my soul."
I've seen peaceful rivers. I've sat on river banks and watched the sun drop slowly into the waters of life and been awed into silent prayer. I've listened to the waters tap softly against a limestone palisade bank. I've marveled at the rampant, almost aggressive life that lives under its water surfaces.
And I've seen rivers that churn and whip across boulders to carve out grand canyons. I've touched them. The gooey water in swamps and watched bugs scamper across their surface while gators guarded it all.
Rivers move and twist at their rate, carving out paths for millions of years, and their changes and shifts. Their waters are red, muddy, and clear, sometimes all in the same river. They trickle and rage, meander and dominate, create, destroy, and recreate.
Peace, like a river, challenges my thinking about peace. I want peace to be an easy state, free of any discomfort and anxiety. And it is, at times.
But the peace of God is not the peace of humans. Too often, human peace comes at the expense of silencing or ignoring disparate voices. We want calm and quietude without the work of shifting and changing our own souls. We want plowshares and pruning hooks without the labor that comes with beating our swords and spears, these tools of war, instruments of nurture and peace. And we want someone else to do the work.
The peace of God is transformative. Changes us from those who would use oppressive power to the people who nurture and tend. The peace of Christ moves us into new places. This holy peace requires that we change and move, not stay stagnant.
Remember that, I think. Oh, no, it keeps going.
Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the trust that God can transform conflict into reconciliation. Peace is not calm, both the disparate voices are silenced, but the courage to stand within the waters of righteous anger, hear the wails of suffering, and the work for change. Peace is crossing from the bank of oppression to the side of justice, and having the faith to walk in the shifting sands and strong current that will make us turn back, except that God calls us to cross to the side of love every single time.
Advent sets us in the holy darkness of peace and waiting, and invites us to search our souls for how we experience peace. Do we settle for human peace that swords and spears inflict? Or are we as Christians willing to have this peace of God, this calm, meandering, raging, and daunting peace like a river in our souls?
So So the theme for this week is deepening our understanding of peace. And we'll get to tomorrow's reflection, because that's where it sort of introduces that theme. But again, I invite any comments on what we've just read, heard. Things that struck you, any ponderings.
It's really challenging what we might normally think of as peace. You know, when I normally think of peace, I don't necessarily think of something that is meandering, raging, and all of that. And yet, I think it makes a good case for that.
And there's a thing about trust in that first sentence.
Say again.
There's a thing about trust. Trust that God can transform conflict into reconciliation. And so there's a lot of trust in regards to the conflict that one might feel in themselves or outside. And then there's the trust. And do we trust enough that peace will prevail?
I've never thought of peace being calm, meandering and raging, and daunting, like the river when it does that. Interesting.
I think her point at the very beginning about what's this, I've got peace like a river in my soul, kind of, I'd never thought about that either, but, I've lived in places where the rivers are not calm, If I look at the Columbia or the Willamette, two rivers that I grew up near, they're big, wide rivers, and for the most part, they're relatively calm because they're so wide. It takes something really significant to stir them up. On the other hand, if you're looking at the Big Thompson River up in the Rocky Mountain National Park or places in the South Platte, they're rivers, but they aren't peaceful, and so what does that mean to say I've got peace like a river in my soul? I found that to be sort of a provocative observation or thought. And then the other one I liked was, let's see, where was it? Wherever it was, it said, we want somebody else to do the work. And to give us that, rather than us sort of figuring out what it would take to beat those swords.
But the peace of God is not the peace of humans. Too often human peace comes at the expense of silencing or ignoring desperate voices. We want calm and quietude without the work of shifting and changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other thoughts, or should we move on to the reflection on the week and then do some more significant conversation?
I'm terribly sorry.
Understand.
Time to go and sing. I've got to sing.
Oh, okay.
Singing is the next thing.
What country
Has to go sing.
is that? What country are you in?
Oh, Australia.
Just across.
Just across.
The bigger pond.
The big pond.
The big pond.
Sorry to have to leave. I love it. It's beautiful. But I've got to go and sing. Connie's waiting.
Don't want to keep Connie waiting. Ron, you want to come up and join the circle?
Sure.
Okay. Who was the last reader? Was it you?
I was.
You, it was you? Okay.
Alive.
Okay. So this is the theme of the week, is deepening our understanding. So
All right. In yesterday's reflection, Lori deepened our understanding of peace by helping us to better understand its multifaceted nature. She wrote how, at times, it is something that calms and soothes us, while at other times, it challenges and changes us.
Peace is a word like love and joy that we use so often that we may take for granted that we know exactly what we mean by peace. Many churches practice the exchange of peace during worship, where the peace of the Lord is shared among the people gathered there. While I have enjoyed the exchange of these greetings thousands of times, I have seldom paused to reflect on what I truly mean when I say those words to someone.
As we take time to reflect more deeply on what it means to practice peace with all our heart, soul, strength, and mind, know that we are honored to walk with you on your journey of spiritual reflection through the season of Advent. Our hope for this daily devotional is that it will help you both to deepen your understanding of peace and to examine how you practice peace with yourself and with others.
Peace on earth is at the heart of the Christmas story, and so it is our hope that making peace the focus of our Advent journey will prepare our hearts and souls to receive the peace of Christmas more fully.
There are some discussion questions we'll move to shortly, but any response to that? You'll have a chance to read it again tomorrow if you're going through the daily stuff, but any reflections on that? I will say, go ahead, Mary.
I was just going to say that it seems like an oxymoron to practice peace. Either you're peaceful or you're not.
No,
But I know it's what they're getting at. But
blessed are the cheesemakers, right? I mean, the peacemakers. So you're making peace. There's an active quality to that, I guess. There. So what does that look like? I was thinking she didn't go the direction that I was thinking of. Is that we talk about peace and then we do the passing of the peace and how unpeaceful that normally is because it's so raucous and everything else rather than sort of reflective and thoughtful. Any other thoughts?
Well, it's kind of talking about how we practice peace, that it's not something that we're sort of doing at any point like 100% or something, that you're trying to, you're like practicing, you're trying to get better, you're trying to, achieve whatever, spiritual goals you're trying to achieve, but it's practice.
It seems almost like we have to be intentional
Yeah.
to be peaceful, to find peace. Just for me.
I think about this word practice every so often about, you're practicing so you get good at it, or you're practicing so you can perform something. And then and Buddhists talk about practice, and that's, beginner's mind, always beginner's mind. And then you think about practicing medicine and practicing law, and you would hope that those people actually know what they're doing.
They don't always.
What is that? So yeah, what does that word practice mean? But in the sense of practicing peace, I guess does that become something, the more you're sort of intentional about it, to use Nadine's word, that you see how that comes into interactions with other people or other situations more readily, and you become a different presence, because that's what you've been doing.
yeah, I think you're right. I know that. Well, I suppose all of us do. We enter maybe a chaotic situation and immediately decide that we need to practice, what we know about calming things down, or just being calm in there and seeing what that does, or
Or contribute to the chaos.
Yeah,
It's like,
but not participating in what is unproductive, I guess, and helping other people to, in a sense, find the shore instead of being swept by that river.
Yeah,
And then you think about everything you're doing. It isn't just a knee-jerk reaction.
yeah, I'm thinking about what you just said, but also, is peacemaking pouring oil on the waters to calm them? Or is it to take the energy that's there in an anxious situation and rechannel it into a different, to a different outcome? Are those are slightly different? I think about that thing that I think all clergy have heard in one place or another, is the exhortation to be the non-anxious presence in an anxious situation. Sort of, and that's kind of, I see as pouring oil on the waters to calm them down.
But you can't begin to work through anything until people are approaching it
Right.
with all of their focus and not being taken out by
Yeah.
or run off in emotion.
I was driving home, be quiet after this, but driving home with my son from the gym the other day. He said, "Dad, I've got a kind of an odd question for you, okay?" He said, and I can't remember all of the context, but it basically had to do with why do some people get freaked out about being put in this situation when it doesn't freak me out? Am I abnormal? And he's been training to be a firefighter for months. And I said, well, that's why you're training. So that when you walk into a situation where somebody's choking or the building is burning or something like that, you don't have to figure out what to do. You can just go and you can kind of do it. So that, that's your practice, is to do that. Whereas somebody else, I use the image of being on a hike, somebody who's a seasoned hiker, seasoned backpacker, and all of a sudden something happens, they've got a pretty good idea of how to handle it. But somebody who's first time and they don't have anything in their backpack or anything like that, they get lost, they just freak out because they have no tools. So maybe that, there's that practice aspect. So, oh, okay. Well, there are some discussion questions, and we can look at, I chose 3, and can talk about one or any of those. If you want to read through them and say, I really want to talk about the second one, or whatever, somebody speak up and choose a question.
The question, what do you think of the idea that peace is more than the absence of conflict? What is your response to John 14:27? Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give as the world gives. Do you ever feel challenged or uncomfortable with these deeper understandings of peace in which Christ calls us? I think where peace is most needed is in those conflict situations. And I think a lot of times if you just try to paper over those conflict situations, you're gonna make it a lot worse. So there's trying not to inflame a situation and trying to maybe come up with some processes that people can buy into to resolve that conflict. Conflict is what's calling out for peace, but it's not calling out for denying the conflict or denying what's actually going on. That's a hard balance to strike. Because I think it's very easy, I mean, I think conflict, you appreciate the need for peace, but you also appreciate that it's a big fuel for anger and aggression. And how are you gonna walk that line?
I remember as a chaplain in an emergency room situation that I was called down and the Roman Catholic chaplain and I were both to go. This room was full of about 20 family members, and they had just lost their patriarch. And this person, I think, was the capstone on the family, kept everything going. Also, I think a lot of people were threatened by, what will we do now financially, for housing? There were, bigger issues being, and they were breaking up into groups and starting to challenge one another on, all kinds of things that almost didn't have anything to do with what was going on. And
Family systems.
and I walked into the room and I thought, oh my goodness, what am I supposed to do with this? But the Roman Catholic guy was another foot taller than I, maybe 2 feet. I mean, he just seemed huge at that point. And he just planted his feet, held out his arms, and said, "Peace be with you!" Everybody stopped. And turned, and he said, "I think it's time for prayer." And very quietly, brought, it wasn't putting oil in the water, it was actually challenging everything that was going on in there. And then we were able to break to work the group and sort of hear what their worries were, help them to realize those are things that they can work out. But
That idea of pouring oil in the water, I mean, it just, there was so much going on that nobody could even identify what needed to be going on. So
right.
was it, that there's that sense of focusing. But then I was also thinking, along the lines of what you were saying, is if there's conflict, does it need to be stopped, or does it need to be resolved? And I think that, any of us who've worked in situations where people have been in conflict, a lot of us, our first instinct is to stop the conflict. Just say, okay, let's get this down, rather than say, well, there's something here that needs to be resolved. And, and the fact that it's boiling over in this particular way just says that in spades. And so how do we, is the deeper peace, and maybe that's the, peace I give you, but not as the world gives you. The world gives you peace that says we stop the conflict rather than resolving the issues. Okay, we've declared a ceasefire, but there's still issues between Hezbollah and Israel, and we're not killing anybody anymore for the time being, but we haven't resolved anything, so there's no peace. It's just a ceasefire. So I never really thought about that. So I appreciate both of your insights there.
Anyway, I think he struck fear into some of them. Oh, maybe there's something more important than staying alive with this guy in the room. But it worked out. I didn't, and it wasn't something I think I could have done. I think it required another foot and a half.
We all carry into a space that which we have. We all have our own specific tools. But I hadn't thought, and I'm really glad you picked that, I hadn't spent a lot of time thinking about not as, I give you peace, but not as the world gives. What is that distinctive differentiation? Is it, some might say, well, the peace that I give you is that when you die, you'll go to heaven in the sweet by and by, and nobody else has that. So that's the real peace that you have. Or is it something else? And I mean, that's an easy way that I've sort of heard that directed, but I don't know. How do the rest of you hear that passage?
Well, I do think too that the peace the world gives you, people think their only way to peace is conflict. Yeah, and particularly on a national level. We'll fight this war and then we'll have peace. And this is not that. Whatever it is, it's not that.
Any other thoughts? We've got a few more minutes.
Maybe we should all become Vulcan.
Maybe we should all
Be Vulcans.
Vulcans.
Use reason, logic.
Yeah.
Don't let the emotions take us over.
Okay.
We're very emotional beings.
For me, it's reading about Gandhi and all the conflict, and he's able to go and be at peace and meditate with the British attacking, and so that always, how he could, it feels like, disassociate with all the turmoil and conflict and be at peace internally.
Yeah.
And then the other is, that comes to mind, is Viktor Frankl. Yeah, with, it's how we respond.
Hold that thought.
Yeah, it's coming up again.
You may hear about that again. But yeah.
It can also be a matter of remembering, being able, not getting caught up in the immediate emotion or confusion, but remembering in the midst of pain or whatever that there is joy. That there is joy, that there is something on the other side or outside whatever you're experiencing. There is purpose. And just hang on, get to wherever you could be where that will happen again.
What would happen if going back to there is peace like a river? It was Herodotus who said you never step in the same river twice. So if peace is like a river that flows through, then you're not always going to be stuck in the same place in that river because it keeps moving. And the recognition that whatever is happening now will be in the past in 2 seconds. And whether there's a sense of mindfulness, of being in the present, to say it's going on, going past. I don't know, because I was thinking about mindfulness as you were saying, being in this sort of now. And maybe in some of those conflict situations is that what really needs to happen is you need to sit there and let that, whatever pain is beneath that conflict, just be and experience it before you can sort of let it heal, begin to let it heal. So, thank you, rich discussion. So here are some things that are suggested for taking this forward. Of course, there is the devotional. Again, you can download it or you can have it sent to you on a daily basis. They suggest maybe doing some gratitude. I don't know if any of you, how many of you do sort of a gratitude practice once a day, whether it's at the end of the day at the beginning of the day to reflect on 3 or 5 things about what you're grateful for and journal on that and to think about them. I find it particularly difficult to do that when things are difficult around me. And then you have to get really sort of granular. Glad I have clean clothes, something like that. Journaling, of this, and there are prompts at the end of each of the daily reflections to journal on, and I know that's what I'm going to be doing. Daily prayer, many of you I'm sure do that already, but if that's not something that you are accustomed to, and then sometimes when we've done these in the past, people have said, yeah, I want to be a prayer partner with somebody else in the room. That's certainly an option for y'all. So if you want to do that, raise your hand, and somebody else might say, yeah, I want to do that. Or you might say, not this time. So before we sort of use the closing prayer, which I'll pull up in a second, any final comments or thoughts or questions? Does everybody have access to the devotional? Or have you tried to access it? I think in years past they sent it out as a Facebook feed, but I couldn't find the link for that this year, and I haven't seen it. But if it is, then I'll just share it through the churches. Not everybody's there, but I'll share it through the Facebook thing as well. Well, then let's say this prayer together and complete our time. Deep peace of the running wave to you, deep peace of the flowing air to you, deep peace of the quiet earth to you, deep peace of the shining stars to you, deep peace of the heart of love to you. Amen. Thank you all. Appreciate this. As I said, I've enjoyed doing these in the past, and that's the richness of this reflection and conversation. I really enjoyed it, so thank you. And hold that Viktor Frankl thought.
I haven't read that thing in a long time, but I remember being so impressed with it when you do it.
Yeah, it is a powerful book. Very different than, as somebody said when I was, because I mentioned it in my sermon. Okay. So when I was looking up whatever I was looking up, whether it was something to have to do with that or when the book was written or something, I forget exactly what it was. I would say, comparing him to Freud and Adler. And I've had enough exposure to both of them that I really like Frankl. So, good.
I met a man who had been a boy of 10 when the war ended, but he was Jewish and in a camp. And he said he made it through because this colonel saw him. It was toward the end. They knew they were going to be captured by the oncoming armies, and they weren't doing anything in this particular camp to try to kill everybody before the armies got there. But there wasn't food to speak of, and he could have died from lack of food. But the colonel said that he wanted this young man to clean out his potbelly stove in his office every day. And every day he found a hunk of bread and under the coals. And he was trying to keep this kid alive if nobody else.
Oh, wow. Some of you may have seen it, and at the end of not at the end, there's an episode in the miniseries Band of Brothers, and it's called Why We Fight, and it's when they liberate the camp, and all of these guys are hungry, they can't feed them. And the one person who's the German translator is Jewish, and he has to tell all these Jews that they can't feed them, and they have to stop giving them food and water until the medics get there and make sure that they're all taking in the right amount before they sort of overconsume, and just so that the flip side of keeping somebody alive is don't feed them in the sense that was, that's, anyway, again, thank you all.
Mary, when I was a little kid, we did go to Dachau. And I tell you, the impression it made on me as a young kid seeing the graphic black and white photographs. And yet, all my French it's never happened.
I know. Chairs back up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know when we let them like this, the Mennonites come in,
They just,
they move them anyway.
right.
So
Well,
I
we're
was
getting
gonna
National
say-
Jewish, and I listened to some of the older nurses
I
that have
guess
been
when
there
I've
for
lived
years.
in here
and so-
before, it was
We've had
kind of a
patients that
circle.
still-
Yeah, the Mennonites do with it whatever they do, and that's fine.